And we begin this half hour with new developments in the Karen Read murder trial. At this hour, we remain on verdict watch.
Jurors have gone home for the weekend after failing to reach a unanimous decision. This follows an announcement around noontime that they were deadlocked, and just over an hour ago, the judge sent the jurors home. This came again after they informed them they were deadlocked. However, they were sent back to keep trying, and now we'll have to wait and see what happens come Monday. NBC 10 commentator and courtroom insider Sue O'Connell joining us live in Dedham. Sue, you have been spending a lot of time at that courthouse. Supporters of Karen Read have been there for much of that trial. Now they're waiting for that verdict. Knowing the jury said they were deadlocked earlier today, has that changed the mood?
Yes, part of this, JC, is also just an education for all of us, right? This is a trial for many of the supporters and the family members of John O'Keefe that even if they're touched by law enforcement in some way, they haven't been through a trial, especially one this complicated. So as I walked around at noontime and people were asking me, well, what does it mean? What happens? How can they be deadlocked? And again, we have no insight into what's happening in the jurors' room during their deliberations. But the idea that they would come out and just tell the judge that they were deadlocked and the judge would send them back in. And the questions, well, how many times can she do that? When do you call it a draw? All those questions are swirling around. People are getting a bit impatient. But again, if you look at how the trial has gone, a lot of the time was taken up by the prosecution, by the Commonwealth making their case, and the jury deliberations have not necessarily been that long when you compare to how many witnesses, how many pieces of evidence. So patience is really the word here.
Right, there's so much evidence to go through. Let's say the jury can't reach an agreement. This case ends in a mistrial. Again, we're just playing devil's advocate here. Do you think the level of interest in the case has generated, remains as high as it is?
Well, I don't think it'll remain as high as it is, but it certainly will take a different dimension, look at different aspects. Certainly, if there's a mistrial, that kind of leaves it open if the Commonwealth would bring charges again, try Karen Read again. There's still the issue, if there's a mistrial, of a sense of a lack of justice for the O'Keefe family and for John O'Keefe. And we really still don't have any answers about what happened, how John O'Keefe ended up dying on the lawn of that home in Canton. And there's rumors swirling about civil suits people might bring on all sides of the issue. And we have the continuing issues that are going on in Canton with their police department and their select board, and the issues that are going along with the state police. So whatever happens, jury verdict, hung jury, any of those things, there's no way that means it's the end of this story around the Karen Read situation and the death of John O'Keefe.
Sue, the prosecution you just mentioned, they'll have to decide, should this end in a mistrial, whether or not they want to prosecute a second time. That's on their plate. But that means that the defense is sort of in limbo. How do you think they're going to handle that? And in the end, who benefits, if anybody, from a mistrial? Because, again, there would be no justice for the O'Keefe family.
Right. I mean, I think it's a draw in a way, I think, JC. If you're the defense this morning, David Yannetti, when the jury came back, the prosecution and the defense were able to make an argument to the judge of what they would like to happen, and Yannetti argued that they would accept a mistrial. It is a win in a way for Karen Read, but it's not a not guilty verdict. And for ADA David Lally and the Commonwealth, it doesn't mean a necessary loss, because it does mean that someone on the jury, or more than one person on the jury, believed that Karen was guilty of something. So that's a wash there. It leaves it open. It's hard to answer, but we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see where people end up if that actually happens. But I guarantee that Judge Bev Cannoni is going to keep pushing the jurors to try and come to a verdict.
And we'll see if that could potentially happen next week. Jurors will reconvene back Monday morning. Sue, thanks so much. Now, as you know at home, as if you've been watching this case really has so many layers. Even after we get a verdict, some of the key players will likely stay in the headlines.
NBC 10's Glenn Jones walks us through some of the unresolved issues.
While a verdict in this trial could mark the end of a years-long investigation, so many loose ends are left to tie up. Let's begin with the federal investigation by the local U.S. Attorney's Office. We don't know who is the target, but we know it's focused on law enforcement activity around John O'Keefe's death. The federal investigation is the reason we saw State Trooper Michael Proctor's text messages. He read them aloud in the Reed trial, admitting they were inappropriate and regrettable. Trooper Proctor remains under internal investigation with state police. That's a loose end. Plus, he's gotten the attention of the defense attorney in the high-profile Brian Walsh case. Walsh's lawyer intends to file a motion to scrutinize Proctor's conduct in that case. Now let's talk about the Canton Police Department, currently undergoing a top-to-bottom audit inspired by fed-up residents following the Karen Reed case. The public demanded an audit in a public vote. The outcome could mean uncomfortable changes even at the top. And then there's Turtle Boy, another loose end. Aiden Kearney is known for his brash blog advocating for Karen Reed. The Norfolk County DA charged him with witness intimidation in the Reed case, setting the stage for another high-profile trial in the very same county where we await a jury's decision right now.
As the Verdict Watch continues, remember we have you covered every weeknight on Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial. That's at 7 o'clock right here on NBC 10. If you are away from your screen, you can listen to our new Canton Confidential podcast.